Tyler, last week we had 4 people on the podcast.
Yeah, that was a record. Well, not record.
No,
but
not a record. Well, actually, I don't. Is it tied for the record? Have we ever had 5?
I think it. We may have. I know we've had a couple where like multiple business owners were in passing microphones back. Like maybe 5.
Maybe
In
5,
recent years. 4 is a lot.
4 is a lot.
Especially 4 individuals, like not 4 separate companies, not us and then 2
and
people.
Locations.
Correct.
And states.
Worldwide.
Well, today
we're like the pit bull of podcasts.
Dude, have you seen? He has hair.
No.
You got to look up Pitbull with hair. He has hair now, and it's the most bizarre. People are going to be annoyed by me mentioning that on.
Maybe he probably has people like Drew working for him, just updating his image constantly, and they're like, Pitbull needs hair. No, I'm not. I don't really follow Pitbull too much.
I know, and I said that I don't follow Pitbull at all. I came across something, and it was like it was a picture. It said, "Did you know that this is Pitbull?" And I'm like, "You mean the bald guy?" Like I feel like
that's crazy. Is that really him?
I don't know. You guys have to find out on your own. Today it's just Tyler and I. We're just gonna chat. One of the things that Tyler mentions in this is, we've had so many different guests on recently and all different areas, from software to CEOs to architects to designers to business owners. And, we want to talk a little bit about bringing it back, right? Bringing it back to some of these owner operators. And then Tyler asks or reminds me that I was once an owner operator.
The old days.
In the old days. And asks me some pretty hard questions in terms of what I think my life would have been if that was my path.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I was thinking about that, and obviously direction of the podcast and everything else. And it's one of those hypotheticals that it's almost impossible to say because that's not the case, and you can speculate and everything else. But more so, just like if you were to have gone a different route, would the evolution remain the same as far as how hard and how much effort you put into evolving? It was interesting. Just something I was thinking about before the podcast. I knew we were on short time today, and wanted to ask you that. Yeah,
so we'll be back to our regular scheduled programming next week, and we got a repeat guest scheduled next week, who happens to be part of This Old House. But
I'm excited.
I'll leave it there. The best way to install a window wall with Andersen Easy Connect joining system.
Why? Well, simply put, it makes your job easier and customers happier. With Andersen's innovative joining system, you can install large window combinations with less hassle and more efficiency. In fact, most contractors surveyed said that they could reduce the number of installers by 50% using the Andersen Easy Connect joining system. With this patented system, large window combinations are split into smaller subgroup combinations that are factory assembled, have all the necessary joining components applied, and arrive ready to install directly into the rough opening, making installation at the job site easier. Learn more about how you can use this system on your next project at andersenwindows.com/pros. I could have used that earlier last week or mid last week because Justin and I installed an 8-foot by 7-foot archtop window on a second floor. And there was no way to get it up the staging or scaffold outside. So I had to go in through the house with it into the second floor and then out of the bathroom. And it would have been nice to break that into 2 separate. Still would have been big and difficult, but putting that together out on the staging would have been easier than getting that sucker up a curved staircase.
Yeah, that sounds tough. Well, if you're like me, you love free resources that can help grow your business. So here's a can't miss tool to help you reach your goals in 2024.
Buildertrend is offering our listeners, a free strategic planning template essential for sustained business growth. It includes step-by-step instructions on how to outline business goals, a comprehensive example of a completed template, and an editable Excel sheet for instant execution.
And this was all created by Breakthrough Academy. It was designed to help you establish a clear trajectory for your business while navigating uncertainties.
The Breakthrough Academy is a program for contractors that teaches them the skills and processes needed to increase profits and tame the chaos in their business.
Get your
free let's do it together. Get your free copy of the strategic planning template today at buildertrend.com/strategic planning. Sorry, I stole that from you.
Killed it.
We had spoken about getting some more belt-on type contractors on the podcast, more getting back to like a grassroots type of conversation, just to mix it up. I on my midweek, I had been mentioning that I think that I said it happened quickly, but I don't know if it actually happened quickly or we noticed it quickly. I think it was actually a pretty slow change that we had gotten away from some of those owner-operators, subcontractors, self-performers, and into management, software, technology, a lot of those things. So getting the names of some smaller contractors, some subcontractors, some self-performing men and women to get on the podcast. But then that got me thinking that is what you used to do. And I don't know how many people know that or did not know that, as far as you being a carpenter and a pretty talented carpenter, and how things have changed so drastically for you over the past few years. But I guess my question, with all that being said, was what you missed the most about, 10 years ago.
Honestly, I think that what I miss the most about it is the actual physical feeling, like finishing a day and being physically exhausted. I don't know, like, a couple weeks ago, Nick Stone from Rockwell came down and we did not have anyone to install the Rockwell on the exterior of the foundation. And he got there and we're like, this is going to take all day. Like, it's a big foundation. Like, there's pallets and pallets of material. And I was like, let's just bang it. Let's just do it. I'm like, if you're up for this, like, let's just bang this out. And we ended up we did the whole foundation in I think it was like 3.5 hours, or might have been less than that. Nick, I remember him, he timed it. And, at the end of the day, I'm like, man, this is what I miss. He's like, insulating a foundation. I'm like, no, like, just feeling accomplished, like physically tired. And I remember when I worked for the big developer in high rise, is that I actually remember the feeling I would have. Oh my God, my computer is trying to do all these things right now. Nope, I'm gonna cancel it.
It's funny that you say that about the foundation insulation as well, because we were together recently, not naming any job sites or names, but we were watching somebody insulate the exterior of a foundation and not do a wonderful job and take their sweet time doing so. Yeah. And we were laughing about it.
I think I asked the super, I'm like, how long have they been doing that? They're like, oh, they've been here a couple days.
Oh my God.
And it was, it was not a full foundation or a very big one. And it's funny. Like, I remember when we were finishing it, we had this 1/2-inch gap on our insulation. So I went back and took a comfort board and I stuffed the 1/2-inch gap. And, and then I was looking at other, not to compare, but I am comparing. I'm looking at another contractor doing, there's like 2-inch gaps. And it's not neat. I'm sitting here like trying to make this thing perfect. But getting back to it, I remember being, working as a PM and in the high rise stuff. And I remember, being exhausted at work. I used to take naps in my office. I remember I would close the door. I'd even I had a key to my office, but a few other people had keys, like my boss. Yeah. And I remember there was a few times I'd take the chair and I'd push it against the door so you couldn't open the door, and I'd take a nap because I'd be so exhausted. And I was working at night and I was doing that, but
Yeah.
The feeling of exhaustion of being in the office all day was gross to me. And and every once in a while I get that here, and I'm like, man, I can't be in the office all day.
Yeah.
And I struggle with that because, like today, for example, today I'm in the office all morning, meetings, Zoom meeting, then I go to lunch with an architect, and then I happen to be in the neighborhood of a previous client that had an issue with her shower drain, so I walked over there, and then I took an Uber back to the office, and I'm back in the office behind my computer, and I couldn't help but to think to myself, when I was driving back in the Uber, and for the record, I took an Uber because it's cheaper than getting a parking ticket, which I would absolutely get in the city. And and my office is in the city now, so it's like $10. But I couldn't help but to think, is like, am I really a builder? And then this imposter syndrome like starts trickling in, like, am I, and have I lost the touch of actually being able to build? And it's weird, and I'm starting to think about it a lot more, and I think that this White Oak project, is something that is going to maybe either reinvigorate me in terms of like being able to jump in the field and like work through problems, or it's going to completely knock me on my ass and be like, dude, you've been off the horse way too long. Like you're so far behind.
Just because you're managing that project
Yeah.
and spending more time on the job and on the with the sub trades and everyone else.
Yeah. And like, that's exactly it. But my thought today, it's just, I'm in decent clothes. I don't have work boots on. My hands are clean. They're, at this point in my life, they're soft. They're not calloused anymore.
But isn't
And
that the goal? Like, isn't that the goal for everyone?
no, I don't think it is the goal for everyone. I think the goal for everyone, and we talked about this before, I think the goal is to just wake up and choose what you're going to do every day. And in specific to me, it's, I want to wake up and choose to do what I want to do. If I want to go sell work, if I want to go in the office and work on the business, or if I want to be in the field working with the guys, like, I want that autonomy. And I think I'm fairly close to being at that point right now. Specifically, I think we've been building this intense amount of inertia behind, our next kind of trajectory, or path for the business, in terms of like who we're going to be working with and the type of clients and the type of projects and the type of architects. But my life is just has been revolving around that, where, last week I flew to New York to speak on a panel. And, when I say it like that, it's like, well, you're just wasting time. Like, why are you going to speak on a panel? Your time is better served here. It's like, well, sure, but I looked at, like, I got to be around an architecture firm that I want to work with, and vendors I want to work with, and people that have clients that I want to work with. And I was able to tour a couple of architect projects and develop new relationships there. It's like, that is my job now.
Yeah.
And for us to be where we want to be, it's, it's me going out and hunting and trying to get this stuff rather than waiting for it to just show up. But I think it's just weird for it. I'm in this point where it feels weird, where I want to be on site. Next week the framers were starting on framing White Oak, and I'm planning to be there a couple of days. Then I got to go to my Build 20 group. But, I'm committed. I'm like, I'll be the guy that has the answers for you. Like, I know I can answer this stuff. I know I can get you. I know I'm a problem solver. I'm not someone that's going to, like, sit on a problem or sit on a question and noodle the hell out of it. I'm gonna, all right, what's the problem? What's the issue? What do we got to do? All right, what's the end result? How do we get there? Let's do this. And, I'm going on a tangent here, but it's that I know that is something I am good at. And I think, from like looking back at my career, I enjoyed kind of that super role more than I did, say, a PM. I enjoyed carpentry. And and I appreciate you saying I was a talented carpenter, but I don't like, I look back and I think I had the ability to be, but I think I just wasn't that patient.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a lot of people probably didn't see the hours that went into everything, and I think that you were always on the move, and probably a couple of steps ahead of yourself, constantly trying to catch back up to what's going. I feel like your body and your mind are always just trying to catch up
Mm,
with each other, and you're always ahead of everything that you're doing. But I can recall, 10 years ago, we were in somewhat of the same place and seeing what you were doing. And it was definitely ahead of the curve from like a carpentry standpoint. And yeah, not that any of us are the best at any single thing that we do, but considering what we were doing and how much we're juggling and handling, I think that, definitely both talented in our own right. And it's funny that you say, um, you look at it at this point now where it's like, yeah, my hands are soft. I'm putting the pieces of the puzzle together, but I'm not performing the work, and I'm so far removed from the work that I feel as if like, am I truly a builder? And I think that there's no right or wrong there. I think that if you feel you're doing the best job you can for your customers and for your team, it doesn't matter what your role is
mm,
or what you're doing. I mean, there's days that I look at what I'm doing at 38 and how many years I've been doing this, and I'm like, should I be doing more, right? Should I be doing larger projects? Should I be there's people who just start out who are building full homes, and sometimes I question that, where it's like, how legitimate is everything that I'm doing if I choose not to grow in a sense,
mm,
and that, like, obviously you can dig into that and unpack that for whatever it's worth, but I think that I sometimes feel that on the opposite end of the spectrum, where it's like I'm still so involved on every project, and I'm still such a huge part of on the job and handling so many different tasks on the back end of things, where it's like, am I a builder, am I a remodeler because it's me, subs, and a part-time guy.
mm-hmm,
um and again, I don't think that there's a right or wrong. I think it ends up coming down to what works for you, what works for your customers, your family, and everything else. I think that there is a way to be successful in both worlds.
mm-hmm. I mean, I agree.
Um,
I think just to speak on what you just said, comparison is the thief of joy, right?
yeah,
And I think that, I definitely struggle with that personally, where I'm constantly comparing myself to where other people are in their career, or what projects they're getting, or how are they landing that particular type of client right out the gate. And, you know, when you really dig into it, and having had the ability to talk to some of these guys one on one, it's I don't want to say it's smoke and mirrors, but it's like people are taking massive risks or doing things for free or making no money for these opportunities. And and sometimes I forget that I did that for a long time. I would do jobs for no money. I would make no money on. I would cover just my time, and I would invest every dollar I could into that project to make it a better project so I could have a better portfolio piece. And I'm at a point in my career where I'm more established. I have more people. Like, we have way more overhead. We need to be more conscious with cash. Like, then I don't have that ability to just go and dump, another 100 grand into a project because I want it to look better. And I think that, and then I get caught up in this world of, like, comparing myself to, anyone, the guys that are bigger than me, the guys that are smaller than me. I constantly think about, like, what I do versus what you do. I think about, like, Mike Connolly, like, shout out Mike. I know you're listening to this, but, like, he runs a lean operation, and I'm constantly impressed by him on, like, when he does this, he does these stories every once in a while where he goes, job 1, job 2, job 3, and it's like job number 9. I'm like, how the hell
yeah.
are you doing 9 projects, like, with 2 guys? He always has some smart ass remark like, oh, they're all, within 5 minutes of each other. Yeah, okay, I guess that does make sense. And if I were to be in his position and only have two guys, could I run 9 jobs? Yeah, I probably could. But I would have I would spend no time building the business, where it's
I
like,
guess in that situation, you were hoping that the work that you're putting out is building the business enough. Like you were relying
I think
a
that's what Mike's
lot.
doing.
Yeah, like I think that you're relying a lot on what you're putting out as far as work to get you more work.
Yes, where
Um,
I'm in a position where I'm literally hunting down people, being like, I want to build for you. I want to, and I want to build with this architect or this designer, or I want to build in this market. And it's just this constant battle of like, how do I communicate who we are? And it's, and there's a lot of effort that goes into like social media. We're spending. Someone asked me today. I met with the architect today at lunch, and we were talking about social media. And he goes, "Man, you go hard on it." I'm like, "Dude, we spend so much money at this point, just creating content and constantly navigating what our story is, and behind that, like what the brand is. Drew's has been on retainer with me for a decade." And we just went through this massive book, right? Like I've shared this before, our process book. It's 116 pages long, and it just walks through our process. It took us like a year to put that together. And part of that was all our core values and like our what we do, why we do it, and how we do it. And last week, Drew came up with, or a couple weeks ago, Drew came up with a better kind of not slogan, but saying, like kind of encapsulating who we are in one sentence. And now I'm like, yeah, rewrite all the core values based on that.
that's what I was going to ask you. Like how long will essentially Drew's on retainer for you, and you're
Mhm.
constantly evolving your business and
Constantly.
so like like you just have a shelf life for everything that you're doing, which makes it harder to sustain everything.
I, I I think it was Drew that told me this, but if you look at your phone, if you pull out your phone right now, yeah, and if you look at the Facebook logo, before you look, where do you think the F is in the Facebook logo in the blue
As
box?
far
Like where is the F located?
I'm in the center. I
You would
mean, that would
think.
make sense.
At one point it was, and about 6 months ago, it was actually on the bottom to the right, and now it's on the bottom in the center.
Mm,
And they make these like micro tweaks. If you look at the Instagram icon, it's like that. Oh yeah, that's been like that for years. No, that gradient has changed constantly. And I remember Drew telling me that. I think it was Drew that told me. And I'm like, that's so interesting that they're just constantly evolving. And I'll never forget. We were on a Zoom call, and we're going through this book right here, the process book, and he flips his screen. You know how when you're on Zoom and you're doing screens
yeah.
here and you're like trying to hide screens? He flips his screen, and all of a sudden I see like my brand, but there's something different about it. And I'm like, what was that? He goes, nothing. It's just something I'm working on in the future. I'm like, no. I'm like, you're gonna have to flip back to that screen. I want to know what you're working on. And he flips to it, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, what, man, what's what's different? Because something has to be different. Like it's got to be, it just looks awesome. And he goes, oh yeah, I'm changing your font type. I'm like, what do you mean? And he starts zooming in and showing me like the subtle changes he made. And if you go to Slash's Instagram, he did an animation of my font 4 months ago to today. And it's super, like, I have this t-shirt right here I'm wearing has the new font on it. But if I was standing in the same room with someone else that has the old font, you wouldn't know.
Yeah.
And I don't know where I'm going with this, but the point is like it's this constant evolvement and refinement. And if specific to the brand, if you think about what I had 8 years ago, it was design, build, repeat. It had cross nails. We had all these like logo marks, and in literally every single year, we've gotten rid of something. So now it's only NS builders, and now there's this whole world where it's like, does it become like, do we continue to reduce? What's the NS underscore look like?
You're going to be like the artist formerly known as Prince, where you can't even say your name.
It's just gonna be N.
It's just a symbol.
Yeah.
So I was just looking up while you were talking about that. I was looking up the evolution of the Instagram logo, and like, yeah, the look
Isn't that weird?
It changed early on. It was the old brown
Mhm.
like picture of an actual camera, but then from 2016 to 2022, it really it's more of just like brightening of that gradient, and it's
Mhm.
changed slightly.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'm just like, I mean, I like it better now, but at the same time, like what is that doing for Instagram? They said that it's for their younger users and everything else, but it's like, if you didn't know and they went back to using the other one,
Yeah.
are you using Instagram less?
Right. And would someone not hire me because I didn't change my font?
Yeah.
It's I don't like, again, this is my life, and it's like I don't need to be doing that. And frankly, I'm not. Like Drew is doing that. Drew is we have deemed him our brand guardian. So, that he is someone that I need on retainer because I'm constantly creating documents or creating, something on the web or social. Like he's there so I can make sure that everything is consistent. But he's also always kind of tweaking things in the background to make sure that it's sticking to our process. Where,
Yeah.
like our Instagram description changed recently because he was like, hey, I really, I've been working on this thing where I think what NS Builders is craft and construction integrated in a process that promotes bespoke and enduring homes for the discerning. I'm like, bro, I love that.
Yeah.
Like that is exactly who we are. And to have someone like him just constantly thinking about that, that's where we just continue to refine and refine and refine. And that's what, in my opinion, is worth like the effort, because it's putting us in a position where people want to work with us.
So, where do you think you would be personally, professionally, had you continued down the road of belt on contractor, maybe running one or two crews?
I have no
Do you
idea.
think do you think that you would like all of this because like I don't feel the evolution would just stop. I think that you constantly would be evolving.
I don't think I would have
um
ever, I don't think I would have stayed belt on. I don't think there was ever a world where that's what I was going to do. I think that I thought I was back then, but I don't think that any path or any decision that I would have made back then would have changed my course.
if you were able to be a belt on contractor and do one house, well, I mean, not
Mhm.
belt on for every single thing, but if you were able to build one house a year of your style and caliber and have the tools on more, which at this point would be almost, anything, but like be more of a supervisory superintendent type of role,
Mhm.
do you think that would be like a viable career option for you?
Yeah, I think so. Um, it really depends on like the rest of my team.
Yeah.
And would I have ended up with the people that I ended up with if I was belt on? Maybe, because I think I still would have had someone like Doug. I would have been filming everything. Um,
I mean, you were, and not to the extent, but I mean, even when you bought your house, you were doing a lot of that, and it's been refined, and you've obviously evolved, and the business have shifted over the years. I just can't help but to think that even if you were to have gone down that path, that you still would have been doing a lot of what you're doing now, just at a different level.
Mm.
And I think that the evolution, I think the probably the amount and the volume of evolution would probably be the same. It would just be different. It'd be interesting to think.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the fact that I did step out of the field awarded me the opportunity to do the things that are outside of the norm. You know, the speaking, the being engaged with, you know, other builders around the country, and networking with, you know, high profile architects, and, you know, and even having the desire um or the bandwidth to do that, to network at that level, where it's like now it's, you know, you know, I'm chasing down architects that work around the world, and I'm finding the one person that's like, oh yeah, come meet us at our office, and I'm like, great, I'm gonna happen to be in New York next week. They're like, oh yeah, swing on by. I'm like, I'm not in New York. I'm gonna book a flight right now and go to New York and meet with you.
Yeah.
And you know, it's you know, I don't know. Like, I think that is probably where I would have suffered. And, you know, maybe I would have become a really great carpenter, or been a great builder or supervisor, and been very localized, and not as, yeah, I wouldn't have been introduced to, I think, what was beyond that. But I say that questioning if that's even the case, because this podcast has been really a big part of it too.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to how we've positioned ourselves within the industry. Because I'm in like I would not say that I am as well versed as you are, and I'm not hunting down architects, and I don't think that I'm necessarily involved to the level that you are in what you're doing. But at the same time, I've been able to make a living remaining small, and I have afforded myself the opportunity to network and go to these shows. Um, but that's the only reason I'm able to do that, is because to the extent that you've grown, I've remained lean on
Mm.
just these polar opposite ends of the spectrum. You know, I think if I had 2, 3 guys, I wouldn't be able to do any of this stuff,
Yeah.
because I'd have to be there. I'd have to be on the job. I'd have to answer questions when things went wrong. I would have to. I think that 2, 3 man setup, a lot of times you're not making enough to justify the overhead of paying people really deserving salaries that they're going to own anything and everything that comes across your plate. And I think that you're probably needed more when you're that size versus when you're really small, or when you start to
Mm.
grow. I think that I would have trouble. I mean, I had trouble even when I had 2, 3 guys, like just stepping away from anything, because as soon as you did, something went wrong. And then it's like, all right, well, how do I juggle things to keep it moving forward and have enough lined up that everyone has work and close things out? It's just, I think that's a really difficult space to live in. And I wouldn't be able to do the things and travel and take time off, um, if that was my arrangement right now. I think it's definitely too hard. Um, I was speaking to a younger carpenter friend of mine who was like, "Oh, I'm so burnt out from this industry," and he's been doing it post college. He has a really good gig, gets paid really well. It's his boss and him, and they manage some framing crews, and then he'll run around and do some odds and ends for this guy who he works for. But he's got a really good setup. Gets paid well. He has a company truck. Hours. I mean, he works a fair amount because he's basically the main employee. But for the age that he is and what he gets paid, he's in a really good position. It's just tough because it's difficult right now to be 25 to 30 years old where you didn't get into buying a house. Mortgage
Mm.
rates are crazy. Even if you have money for a down payment, you can't afford the interest, or your buying power is nothing. So he just is like a bit disenfranchised with the industry right now. And he's like, I just can't imagine that these bigger, higher end guys are going through the same crap. Like, I'm surrounded for the most part with people who are just here to collect a paycheck. And I can't imagine that this is the case everywhere. And I kind of feel like it is. Like, I think that there are exceptions to that. And there's teams of people and companies and areas where a lot more people want to be there, and they they're getting compensated enough that they want to go the extra mile. But I think not just unique to our industry. Most people are at a job to pay their bills and make a living and support whatever lifestyle, and it's a means to an end. It's not necessarily like their calling in life.
Yeah, I think it's a hard concept for me to grasp, because I always think that everyone wants the same thing I do. And that's not just like owning a business or running a business, or to make a lot of money, or own a house, or own whatever. Like, it's not even just that. It's just, sometimes I think that we, this whole employer versus employee argument, it's like an employee is never going to work as hard as an employer. That's totally fine, totally fair. But, why is it that they don't want to work hard? Why isn't it that, isn't there gratification there? Isn't there the opportunity to, isn't there the opportunity to feel like you've accomplished something bigger if you put, like, I don't know, like, I guess what I'm saying is I've always been wired this way, where it's like, why not work as hard as you can? And to be on the other side of it, where it's like, no, I'm just going back to the installation. It's like, dude, we could have spent all day putting that installation up.
Yeah.
And this is probably why I didn't stick with the belt for a long time, is because I think I was, like I said, I was impatient, and I always felt as though I needed to get something else done, which was, I think, a detriment to me being a carpenter or a self-performer, where I never really stopped and took the time to really execute things to the best of their ability. But if I had to, I could. And I never doubted that. And when that chance or that opportunity came, about, and I needed to execute at a really high level, I did. And, and for other people not to feel that way is weird to me. It's like, why wouldn't you want this to be the very best that you can do? And why are you allowing yourself to do anything less than the best?
I mean, do you think that there's more people, or that's more common in the industry that you think, and a lot of the performance issues are based on people feeling as if there's too much on their plate and not enough time, and they have to be getting to something else, rather than, hey, I just don't feel like being here?
I feel like people just don't feel like being there.
Yeah.
That's just, and I don't know. That's just weird to me. It's like, for me, it's, why not? I mean, I guess, there's certain things that I don't love doing, and I just, I'll half-ass something, and, and truthfully, it drives me nuts that I do that. And I try to remove things that create that half-assedness. And, a specific example is like, when I can bang out takeoffs and spread estimates and budgets for projects, but there's like certain line items that take more of my attention. Example, carpentry. Like, a lot of that is like going through and figuring out how much baseboard is in the project, and how much casing, and just like, it's way more in the weeds, where I'm not relying on, I'm not like, my plumber is telling me, hey, it's $80,000 to plumb the house, and he knows how much PVC and copper he's got to use. I'm not doing that. So, I get to division 6 on my budget, and I'm like, all right, skip, I'll come back to that at the end. And then I do everything else. And then I have to go back. I'm like, you know what? It's probably about $100,000 to frame this house. And that shit drives me nuts, because, it's like, well, I'm taking the time to do everything at 100%. Why am I now skipping out at this phase? And it's usually because, well, I have a meeting to go to, or I have to go and do this. And I've created this life of chaos, maybe. Like people, my team constantly is like, hey, trying to book time with you on your schedule, but it says your schedule is literally like you have a half hour every day.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. And they're like, is that all legitimate, or can I override some of those? I'm like, you're gonna have to ask me which one you want to override.
I think that that's why it is so important um, to enjoy what you do in some way, shape, or form.
Mm,
And I don't think that, you don't, your job doesn't necessarily have to be your calling day in and day out, but I think that it has to provide some sort of fulfillment for yourself, whether that is financially, whether it's the fact that you get to solve problems, whether it is service work that just provides you, whatever you need that you are giving back to humanity or people who need it more than you. I think that you have to find that out, and I believe in those situations and in those instances, you're going to give yourself the best opportunity to succeed and put your best foot forward. There was a listener who sent Doug a really long letter in response to a midweek that I had recorded, and his name was Pat, and I'm like, I've been emailing him back and forth because he sent it to producer, and then I got his email and email back, and like I'm debating whether I want to put, if I speak to him, put that letter that he drafted up on the blog post on the website. It's very well written. It's long. It's comprehensive. But in short, he's like, I've done a lot of different things. Some provided me financial capacity when I needed it, or substance, and sometimes it was, I was able to give back. There was a service work there, and some jobs were good for me, some jobs weren't good for me. I afforded myself enough breathing room that if an opportunity came across my plate, I could do that. I could risk something and go try that. He's like, I was never poor. I was never rich. I've had less and I've had more. But at the end of the day, like all his decisions were based on what he needed at that time in his life. And although he did enjoy a lot of his jobs, certain jobs provided him more fulfillment than others. And those were a lot of the times in his life that he felt, whether he was the happiest or the most successful or gave his family the best opportunities in life. And I think that that does translate over to what we're talking about, where it's like, not every day is going to be perfect. And it's the same thing I told this guy, Dom. It's like, maybe you don't love your job right now, but
mm,
you're learning a shit ton. You're getting compensated very well for it. You're building a network within the industry, and you have to look at the outlook more so than just like your day to day. I don't like the industry. I don't like that I'm doing this. I don't like my boss. I don't like who I'm working for. If it's that bad, you have to make a change. But you can also look at it from the perspective of like, what is this providing me?
mm.
And you can be okay with just like, hey, you know what? This job is providing me financial security right now. And like that can be enough to get you by for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
But you have to put yourself in a position long term. You have to put yourself in a position where you find something and get something back from what you're doing, because if not, it's just going to be a miserable experience, and it doesn't matter if you're making money or if your hours are good. You're not going to be happy long term, if you're not having your needs met with whatever you're doing.
I think that's a big reason why I've summarized when people ask me what do I want to do, it's I want to build cool shit with cool people. And and I usually follow that up with like right now it's houses. Maybe it's not houses eventually. I just I I also I also kind of enjoy being in pain, and doing stuff that's hard, um, and powering through it. And I remember last year I was out for a run, and I think I had done a post or something about it, but I had said, what's so interesting about running, at least for me, is that I hate it. Like
Yeah.
I don't like going for a run, and I'm out there, and there's this point where it's just you're in pain, you can't go any further, it sucks, this is terrible, like I just but and for me I would be like, but I'm so close to home, I know I can make it home. And then the moment you get home and you stop and take a break, it's like you could actually go back out and continue to run. Like
Yeah. It
and
wasn't that bad.
it wasn't that bad. And to I can't quote him because I don't remember the percentage he said, but I remember when I read David Goggins' book, when he, in the book, he had said something along the lines of, when you feel like you have to give up, just know that you're at like 40% of your actual capacity. And I know, like, he totally made that up, right? Like, he's just made this complete, percentage up in his mind, but he said it. And every time I do something and I'm at a point where I'm like, I have to give up, I think about that. And I'm like, man, what a powerful thing to say, where it's like you, and it goes to, kind of goes to show, that your mind, it's this whole mind over matter thing, where in that moment where I feel like I have to give up, my body can't take anymore. And then I remind myself, it's like, no, this is actually only 40% of what I'm able to actually accomplish. And you power through it and you get to the end. It's like, oh yeah, that wasn't that bad.
It's, I think so much of like when you are going through hardship, obviously there's a physical aspect to it, and we all know that so much of it is mental, and like mental strength and mental fortitude is one thing, but believing and setting your mind right with the fact that you're going to be able to do this and that you envision this is how this is going to happen. And I'm always impressed by high level athletes where they interview them after they've won something that like no one expected them to win.
Mm.
And they're like, how crazy is this that you won? Like, how do you feel right now? And they're just like, yeah, like this is how I saw it happening. I'm not surprised by this. I'm not shocked by this.
Right.
They're just like, yeah, like when I envisioned it, I envisioned myself winning.
Mm-hmm.
And there, I can look back to like my athletic career and even things I've done in my life, and I've almost like I can distinctly recall not envisioning winning because I didn't truly believe that I was going to. And to say like, oh yeah, I'm gonna win when you know you're not going to win, always seemed very inauthentic, and you were foolish. But you see these young men and women who are like, no, yeah, like this isn't a surprise to me. I saw myself, I prepared myself for this day every day of my life,
Mm-hmm.
and this is just a part of that journey. And they truly believe it. And if they don't win, it's, hey, this is just going to make me better. This is a part of it. You know, I prepared. I got to put all my preparation to the test and celebrate it through the performance and whatever I've done at this point. But like, yeah, there's just more work to do. And that outlook to me is so cool to see, and something that I feel is even hard to relate to, because I don't know how many things I've done in my life where I've gone into them and truly believed that like this is going to happen because I'm 100% confident it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. I think a great example of that is Conor McGregor. Love him or
Yeah.
hate him, he would go into that ring and he said, I'm gonna win
Yeah.
every single time. And he didn't. He lost a ton. And when he lost, he was like, understood, appreciate it, back to work.
Yeah.
And that, I think, I think you're right. I think that, people talk about speaking things into existence, and I think a lot of people get flack for that, but it's the resiliency to just continue to charge forward, and if when it fails, or if it fails, it's like, yeah, sure, That doesn't mean it's over. I take that and I apply it to the next thing. And, but I think that a lot of people lose confidence and because it's easier, right? Like to give up, it's easier to stop running and just walk home, easier than running home.
I mean, it's even easier to just go into something saying I may fail. Like that's easier than going into
Right.
something saying
Because when
I'm
you,
100% going to win this tournament.
right.
Like,
Because if you say I might fail, it's like now when you fail, it's like, yeah, I know. Like, it's okay.
yeah, or
Like
now it's so
like
much easier to find an
there's less
excuse as to
pressure.
why you did fail.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like you go into something saying, yeah, like I know that I prepared to win this, or do this or deliver this on this date, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
It does put a lot of pressure on you, and it takes huge balls to do that. And there's not, I see young men and women doing it all the time, and older men and women, but it's especially impressive when you see somebody who's so young have so much confidence in themselves and in their training and in their coaches and in their entire team, that they truly believe they're absolutely prepared to execute. And if they don't, they're just like, all right, I miscalculated, back to work. There's
Mm-hmm.
no like hanging their head. This isn't the end of the world. Like I did everything, because they know that they did everything leading up to that than they possibly could have. They didn't take any shortcuts.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's
so they
actually a
look at
great
it
point. I think like,
as if like there's nothing more I could have done.
yeah, and I think that when people hang their head, it's usually because they know that they didn't give it everything.
Correct. There's something that they could have done more. And
It's
it's
like,
like,
oh,
if you actually give your all,
yeah.
then it's like there's nothing else that I could have done. So
In truth, I mean, that's how I feel about White Oak.
yeah.
This is a commitment. This is literally, someone asked me today, was like, why are you doing this on spec? I'm like, to rewrite our entire portfolio and the trajectory of our company. And they're like, oh wow, I love that. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, it seems like such a big risk. I'm like, it's a risk if I give up, but I'm not like, I'm not going to give up.
Yeah.
What, and then people are like, well, what if it doesn't sell? I'm like, why wouldn't it sell? It's like, well, what if you can't find a buyer? I'm like, then I'll keep looking for a buyer. It's,
Mm-hmm.
it's the market's there. People want that product. People don't want to go, a lot of people don't want to go through the fatigue of building a house, where
Yeah.
it's like, if a house just shows up and it's perfect for them, like, why wouldn't you buy it? Not everyone builds a custom car. Some people are paying $1 million for a car that comes off the production line, because guess what? They can drive it home that day.
Yeah. Especially in today's day and age.
Right. And it's, and at the end of the day, it's, whatever the outcome is on that, it's a lesson, good or bad. I take that and I apply it to the next thing. But it's, for me to go into that thinking, yeah, well, this could fail. Like,
Yeah.
what? It's like,
That's terrible for everyone involved.
everyone. Like, my team's like, oh, okay, so this might be a bad idea. No, it's a fucking great idea. And
Yeah.
it's going to be the best thing that we've ever done. And it's gonna break records, and there's gonna be a line at the door for people wanting to walk it, and multiple people wanting to buy it. That's the way this is gonna play out. It's just not. It's not the other way. And the only way it ends up the other way is if I decide I give up because this is too hard.
Yeah.
And that would be foolish.
No, absolutely. And I think that that's the mindset to have. And that's definitely respectable. It's cool to see. I think that as much as we have conversations and people have conversations, even last week or whatever it was when we recorded with Austin, like frustrations within the industry. If you want to work hard, you can create a ton of opportunity for yourself, whether you want to be big, you want to be small. Good and bad thing about this industry, I've said it a lot, is that it is the wild, wild west. There's no standard.
Yeah.
There's no benchmark. Whatever you want to do, you can do with enough work, sweat equity, and drive. Nobody's going to be stopping you.
It was I think it was Dana White that said something similar to that, where it's like if you just have a little bit of drive in you, just a little bit, or savage in you, or something like that, it's like you'll outperform most people.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I believe that, because like we're talking about, there's a lot of people that just want to show up and just do what they need to do, maybe at a mediocre level, and go home. And for the record, good on them. Like, if that's what's good for their life, and that gives them the life that they want, all the power to you. I'm just not wired that way. And
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people that listen to this podcast are probably not wired that way and struggle to relate to that. Um, Real quick, Austin, the day after his podcast, for anyone that doesn't follow us on social media, he did get final sign off the next day. They did work with him. He texted me. I'm like, all right, we gotta make sure everyone knows that
Yeah. I had
ASAP.
a handful of people reach out where they're like, this is absurd.
Yeah.
So I've been letting people know prior to announcing it here that they were willing to work with him,
Yeah.
which is good. I think a lot of times we give the township, the cities, municipalities, all that crap bad rap, and at the end of the day, they're trying to protect themselves, and sometimes we make mountains out of molehills.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that was the case, but it's like, all right, mistakes were made.
Mm-hmm.
This happens every single day. How do we move forward without really squeezing anyone?
Yeah. I want to end this discussion with, talking a little bit what I said in the beginning about imposter syndrome, and kind of relating to what you just said, is that this industry, I think that a lot of people don't give themselves enough credit, and feel as though they have this sense of imposter syndrome that, I'm not where I need to be yet, or I'm not actually a good builder. Like, you know, I go through it too. I feel as though sometimes it's like, why am I speaking to 130 people in a classroom when I got shit back home that isn't going great, or I'm still
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure things out, or it's like, and I struggle with that. But what the reality is there's things that I am great at, and there's great advice that I can give, that I can share, and everyone should feel as though they're in a position like that, because everyone has a different experience and has something to contribute to a conversation. And and for what it's worth, I think that everyone has a a moment in time, if not multiple, that they feel as though that they're an imposter and they're not who they truly say they are. um, and that's just not the case. You're just at a different point in your process or in your story.
Yeah, I mean, with regard to that, something I had texted you. So after we do these presentations, they have people fill out surveys,
Oh.
and I was going through and I was reading the surveys for IBS and JLC, and like for the most part, everyone's pretty positive. But then I sent this to Nick and this like a couple of years ago would have buried me, would have been like absolutely terrible for my self esteem and confidence. But one of the reviews was Tyler is no expert. He is not a good example of a remodeling company that has any growth potential. He does not use software to run an efficient business. He is a one man. Can't believe I paid for this. And again, like a couple of years ago, that would have like really hurt,
Mm-hmm.
and like would have probably pushed me to the point where it's like I need to change something,
Yeah.
where it's like that's exactly what I am. That's exactly what I'm pitching that I am. That's exactly what I stand behind, that I've made a living doing, and there's reasons why. And there's a lot of people like that. There's a lot of one mans out there, and I
Mm-hmm.
want to be an advocate and a resource for those people. Um, I never claimed to run a highly technological company with software and everything else, and I probably would go as far as to say that it's you will not be getting a return on that with the size of company that I am. But like shit like that to somebody who is 10 years younger than myself could derail them. And make them make decisions differently. And at the end of the day, it's just what works for you and what makes you happy and what gets you by and what supports your team and everyone else. And there's no quintessential builder. There's no quintessential remodeler.
Right.
It's not a male. It's not a female. It's not an experience type thing. The old carpenters where it's like, I've spilled more beer than you've drank while sitting at lunch on the job site. Like, they're no better than you are. If you show up with a positive attitude and you try and better the industry, we need more people like that.
Yeah.
And the imposter syndrome can be a huge bummer, but just know that everyone's trying to figure all of this out and nobody has it completely in order. It's like being a parent. You're making a lot of shit up and you're trying to continue moving forward, but don't let crap like that get you down.
Love it. What show was that, or what presentation was that?
I think that I screenshotted it and like pulled the rest out. I think that was NHB, the remodelers
Symposium.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, we scored well on the one, the
JLC. Oh, yeah, the one at the actual show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Capturing all your costs, right?
Yeah, so like the overall the scores were good on that. There was like 4 or 5 other speakers, and like I said, most everything was positive.
Yeah.
You're not going to fit everyone's agenda and everyone's program, and sometimes it doesn't. But you can't let that get you down. Just continue to confidently do what you're doing and believing in what you're doing, and you'll be all right.
Oh yeah. Well, with that being said, we got less than a month and we're going to be in Minneapolis. Tyler's first time at the summit won't be his last time, if I have anything to do with it.
Hell yeah.
May 15th through the 19th. A bunch of you guys actually signed up this week, which is great. And if you guys want to sign up, head over to contractorcoalitionsummit.com. You do need to secure your ticket. And I do want to announce that we are also allowing you guys to secure spots for Boston. So Boston's going to be in the fall. If you go to, I think it's other events or something like that on the website, there's an option in there to secure your spot with a small deposit at the very bottom of the checkout. Tyler will be at that one. But in addition to that, you'll be able to tour some of our projects. And that includes 45 White Oak. So we'll have that in the additional curriculum for the fall. So if you want to secure that spot now, head over to contractorcoalitionsummit.com. You can either sign up for Minneapolis in May or secure the spot for Boston in upcoming events. We'd love to see you there.